Welcome back to the Brown Couch.
Indeed.
How you been, Bob?
Wonderful. How about you?
Been good. Been good. Happy Father's Day, by the way.
Indeed. Yep, that was a great day.
Yeah.
Also happened to be my birthday.
Happy birthday. There we go.
So as a part of that, we have new technology that we're recording on.
Yes.
We got a new green wall, which hopefully will be used for some green screen action.
Yeah.
We'll have to play around with that.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? How was your Father's Day?
It was good. It
Yeah.
was good. Yeah. Hung out with my family and ate way too much food. So, as if I needed that in my life. Yeah, it was fun.
Good.
It was really fun.
That's what Father's Day is all about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So today we promised our viewers metaphysical discussion, at least as a part of it.
Yeah.
So how about we dive into that and just kind of see where it goes.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I suppose. Well, let me ask you about your views on reality. What is going on here? You find yourself a human baby at some point. A young person. You arrive in this world. You're you've got a family around you.
Mm-hmm.
You're given kind of a name and an identity and all this sort of stuff. What is all that about? What is going on?
Well, my belief is rooted and grounded in the Bible.
Okay.
So I believe that God, that Jesus made the heavens and the earth.
Okay.
He also formed man.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I get, where man came from,
Yep. Okay.
So, I mean, that's my belief in it.
Okay. Sure. Now, what kind of branch of Christianity do you come from, or denomination, or are you non-denominational? Or
I come from many denominations.
Many denominations. Okay.
It started off as non-denominational, and then we went to a Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went from there to another non-denominational to a sort of a denomination, more or less like non-denominational, but if you disagree with us, we'll kick you out type thing.
Okay.
Back to another denomination. So I don't get hung up on denominations.
Sure.
I think it's just everybody wants to feel like they're in a club, and
there you go.
It's like whatever. I don't really care, dude. You have this belief, and then you slap the label on it.
Yep.
And it's just you're tweaking what someone else. And I probably just offended a whole bunch of people because they were like, "That's not really what denominations are." And it's like, dude, I really just don't care. I don't. I read the Bible and I believe what it says, and it's got good preaching. Then let's go for it.
There you go.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
And as long as they don't have views that are completely, against what I believe, because people interpret different passages of scripture or have a lack of understanding on how something's interpreted.
Sure.
They were told that's how it's supposed to be, so that's why they just hold firm on it. It's like, well, you need to do a little bit more research than just listen to your pastor. Your pastor's not flawless.
Yeah.
So, anyway, sorry.
No, hey, this is what I'm in for. So, what are your beliefs or understanding around, say, like people not of the Christian faith? Is this like a one and done? You got to get it right. Damnation and hellfire sort of a thing, or is there a
more nuance than that?
A little bit more nuance.
I'm a one and done. It's kind of you either believe or you don't.
Okay.
So yeah,
that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And that's I think many people end up in that sort of one and done situation. I think I had used to be there at one point, but now I'm more of a universal salvation sort of person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you believe then about creation of the universe in general? What is this? Where does the matter come from?
I believed it was all made on that first. Well, some of it was made on the first day.
Okay.
You kind of have this old Earth, new Earth creationism type ideal. You've got the gap theory. You get people that think that all this stuff's been just sitting here for billions and billions of years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Well, we can figure out the Earth and the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my point of view on how old everything is I believe in a young Earth, young universe.
Okay, young Earth, young universe.
Like we're talking 6,000 to 10,000 years.
Okay.
Max.
Okay.
Because there's more evidence for that than there is evidence for billions and billions of years, because that you're just literally slapping a number out there being like, this is more believable than a young Earth.
Sure, yeah.
To some.
Okay.
So
all right.
I mean, I believe God made everything, and I mean in literally 6 literal days.
Okay.
So
6 literal days. Okay. All right. What do you believe about? And I think that this gets into the metaphysics.
Okay.
But what do you believe about the concept of, like aliens or something? Something out there. Nothing. Don't exist.
Aliens, I don't think exist.
Okay.
For one, as a believer, why would God make aliens?
Why not?
He could.
Sure.
But his word, he's not gonna go against himself.
Sure.
So my thought is, when he made man in his image, and his son came and died for man.
Okay.
On a cross. You mean tell me he's got to go and die on every stinking planet to save his other creation? Or maybe, but also God wouldn't make other creation and be like, nah. And this crazy looking beetle looking thing flying around in a spaceship, I'm not going to save that thing. It's creepy. Yeah. I don't know why I made it. It was a mistake. He doesn't make mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way I look at it. Also, I mean, the universe is massive. So to say there's show me the evidence.
Yeah.
I don't. It's too big to be able to say that. But someone's putting their faith that there's aliens out there, and some people put their faith in there's not. Mm-hmm. I think if something does show up on this earth, it's demonic. Okay. And I think it's from another spiritual world, because at least the way I understand it, you can have demonic forces be in the spiritual world and
in the physical. So where did the spiritual world come from?
It was created by God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Valid. Okay. So, all right. I used to think probably quite similar to you.
Okay.
Okay. When I was in my younger years, probably in my teens and 20s and stuff, I remember there was a conversation that I had with one gentleman who was a Christian, but also kind of convinced me of more of the old earth way of looking at things. For a while, I drifted into agnosticism a little bit. So it wasn't full-on atheism, which in my opinion is more of a belief in no God. Mm-hmm. So agnosticism is that kind of gray area of I don't know and maybe I can't know sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that changed about 3 years ago, and I became a lot more of a spiritual person as opposed to a religious person. So I see a commonality, a truth that flows through all religions, and am trying, like in my own life, to kind of reunite some of those opposites that have pulled apart. In particular, I think that the Christian faith has a lot of really poor understanding of what's going on in terms of its metaphysics, and that poor understanding of metaphysics translates into kind of what I would consider weird belief patterns. An example, and I'm not being critical of your belief.
You can be as critical as you want.
But a weird belief pattern would be something like, aliens are demonic, which is, I believe,
it's not even biblical. Yeah. So I can't say that. I can't say, I'm not going to say thus says the Lord, or that's in the Bible, or other Christians say that. I'm saying that's my own interpretation.
Yes.
Because the Bible doesn't talk about aliens.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, if it doesn't talk about it, then I can't sit there and say that well, this is what Christians believe.
Sure.
This is my thought on me trying to understand it. So
and many Christians end up with that same kind of mindset around the unknown. So the unknown is out there. It represents something closer to demons or something, and or even like the idea of the spiritual realm. So I think a spiritual realm exists. I've seen what can be called a spiritual realm.
Okay.
A lot of Christians say, yes, I think there's a spiritual realm that exists because I've seen it written about.
Okay.
But they don't have that firsthand contact. And that firsthand contact, I think, actually changes a lot of, like, it changes that metaphysics, like what in the world is actually going on here.
Okay.
So, yeah, my contact with the spiritual realm started after my brother passed away, and I was exploring with psychedelics, and so that was kind of a foundational trigger set of experiences that lasted over 6-8 months, something like that.
Okay.
And it changed my worldview fundamentally. And I could talk about the psychedelic experience, and again, not in terms of like, oh, here's the visions I saw, but more like the feelings involved and the principles that I kind of gleaned from it, which I think really translate into the metaphysical side of things. Anyways, so for a psychedelic, you ingest it or smoke it or whatever, depending on which one you're taking.
Right.
And a few things happen. One of the main things that happens almost right away is it's like there's an overlay to reality, and reality starts. You can see like almost like the fractal lines in between things or that make up things, and it can like literally break apart in front of your eyes, or like a gap can open up and you can like fall into that gap. I mean, it's amazing. And the weird thing about
it... Can you move when you're on it, or is it more or less just you kind of sit there like you're stoned?
There is movement, but it is not tied to your body. Okay, so
you just kind of sit there and stare off into space, but there's a lot more going on.
Kind of, yeah. So like if I was looking at you and you were on psychedelics, you might be rolling around, laughing, crying, having kind of physical experiences that way.
Oh, wow.
However, your conscious experience, like your first person, hey, this is what's going on, is going to be just radically different.
So you don't know that you're just rolling around on the ground?
No.
That sounds dangerous.
Can be. But more fundamental than that, it actually gets to the question of what are you? Okay? Because like your whole life you've lived in this thing where you've got kind of like these thoughts going through your head, right? So you've got thoughts, and then you've got the inner and the outer. You've got like this physical body, and everything is always eternally tied to that. So the thing that I am, what my conscious experience is somehow tied to this body. If I throw a rock at the wall, I'll hear the sound of it, but the wall is the thing that's going to get the dent, and I don't feel that. So there's no feeling associated with it, it's just the sound, right? With psychedelics, that connection to the body is removed somehow, or lessened, or whatever. And so there's this existence as a conscious being floating around, and not even necessarily like floating in our world, like floating in other worlds, like experiencing wild, crazy stuff, fractal patterns, angels, potentially demonic stuff. Again, like all this stuff is happening. There's a sense to, in one sense, this is very much like a dream. Okay, so when you fall asleep and you have a dream,
I was gonna say, it's starting to sound like you're just basically tapping into, like, instead of sleeping, you're tapping into like a dream type world.
Kind of, yes. So, but understand that too, like reflect on the nature of a dream to yourself, right? So a dream is a state where you're, again, not necessarily tied to this body. Your body is laying there on a bed, right? Objectively speaking. Okay. But your consciousness is going through a series of experiences. They may or may not make sense, but it's involved and wrapped up in a storyline, a plot, a series of events. You don't really ever question, hey, how did I get here? What am I doing? Like if you did, then that's when you start waking up, right? So you go through a process of waking up, but it's kind of like what's the Inception thing? Like you find yourself on the corner of a store. You don't know how you get here. You don't know why you're here, but you just kind of like take it and run with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay. So so there's something about consciousness that grabs onto anything that it's experiencing, and it just says, okay, this is going to make sense. I'm just going to go with it. And it doesn't matter if it's a dream. Like you could wake up or you could be in a dream and like be at a circus, or you could go flying, or have any number of dreams. And I suppose even for military guys, if you've got any sort of PTSD, you might be reliving those moments, but suddenly you're there, right? Like there's barely the capacity to say, oh, this is a dream, because as soon as you recognize it as a dream, then you wake up, or
even when you're on that DMT or anything like that.
Kind of. So back to the psychedelic experience. Well, okay, actually, let's talk a little bit about the difference between dreams and reality. We're often told that we have 5 senses, 6 senses. You've got your sight, hearing, taste, smell, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple more that we have, and one of those is apparent when you wake up from a dream. Okay, the sense that comes there is, oh, this reality is the real reality. That reality was just a dream. I'm going to discard it, ignore it, not worry about it. I don't have the same feelings of tension, and it's a lesser thing that I don't need to take quite as seriously, right? Okay. That sense gets triggered in a psychedelic experience. The difference is that this reality that we're existing in right now, the conversation we're having, is less real than the psychedelic reality. This reality that I've existed in for 41 years now, as of yesterday, feels like the dream.
So what makes you, why do you say that? What did you experience in that experience that would make you go, huh? Like what I guess what would trigger that? Like, I mean, why wouldn't you just constantly be just
doubting it?
We're just constantly taking drugs to stay in that reality, if that's more real. Because
good question.
Because that reality doesn't pay the bills.
Sure.
So that's where I'm kind of like, this feels pretty real when I get a thing saying you need to pay your cell phone bill or your mortgage. So
this is exactly that is a fantastic question. Let me see. So there's a couple other feelings that come along with the psychedelic experience.
Okay.
Besides this idea of it being more real. Number one, it feels like home. Okay, so it's a deep knowing, like, oh yes, of course, this is obvious. It's always been this way. This is the home, the creative side. This is comfort. This is the place that I've been before and am going back to. This is source, whatever you want to call it. This is spirit. This is kind of all that bundle of things. But it's a deep knowing that, oh yeah, duh, like how could I have possibly have forgotten this? So the fact.
Do you think though that possibly what that's doing to your brain is bringing back? So you have people that can have good trips. I've never taken this stuff. So this is I had a good friend of mine. This is why I'm interested in this conversation, because I've had a friend of mine who was a believer, and we were in youth group together, all this stuff, and he ended up taking acid and like never came back to reality.
Okay. So
like,
he was just
he's like constantly on it.
Okay.
He quit a really good job, abandoned his family, everything, bought a school bus, and just is like, I'm out of here.
Okay.
Not working for the man. Like super paranoid, super. He comes across as if like, at least the last time I saw him, he came across angry. Like I don't know what happened. It was almost like he just snapped. And it was like, what happened to this loving guy that like got along with? And now it's like everything's just like, it's not real, man. It's not real. It's like, why are you getting all aggressive up on me? Like, Just talk to me. So that's why my experience with this stuff is I've never taken it, but my experience through other people has been like either this guy's in like Disneyland and everything's fine, or you're like so twisted now mentally. There's a reason why they probably call it acid, and it probably does something to your brain. But you know what I mean? Maybe I'm being facetious, but what I'm saying is like I saw him, he changed and not for the better.
Yes.
And if you talk to him, he gets like aggressive because he's like, "Oh, this is better. You need to do this." No, I think something's wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've never seen him since. I hope he's still alive.
Yeah. No, and I am very sympathetic to that because.
And he wouldn't say he had a bad trip.
Yeah.
He's just like everyone needs to do this, and something's not right with his brain now. And that's why I'm like, what? That doesn't.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm like, I'm basing what you're saying off of that.
Absolutely. So those existential moments where you kind of peek behind the veil, so to speak, and you see that spirit world again, and you recognize it as being a more true thing, can really change your relationship to this reality. And one of the things that it can do is that sort of reaction where it's like, man, this isn't real. I'm going to treat it as, my own selfish playground. I'm going to, screw the family, screw the responsibility, screw the man, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to, live my passion or whatever it is. I'm going to get the school bus and run off. That can happen. Okay.
I don't know if I like those odds.
No.
That can happen.
That can happen.
Roll the dice.
Well, okay. The alternative is I'm going to stay in this dream, this reality, and not experience, I'm going to pretend that this thing is the most real thing going on forever. I'm going to have, a one and done salvation story. I'm going to be rigid in my outlook about, God and love and those sorts of things. Again, I'm not trying to belittle your perspective.
No, you can say, honestly, you're not going to offend me. You can sit there and be like, everything you believe is a bunch of, horse crap, and we can sit here and get to keep, I wouldn't do it anyway.
Yeah.
But, you can literally just take a crap on everything that I believe, and you're not going to offend me because I'm grounded in what I believe.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we can have opposing, and we can sit here and we can be like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I think that's dumb. Look at my evidence. We can sit here and go back and forth. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
So you don't have to even apologize because you're not going to offend me.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there is that. Okay. There's something about psychedelics. They're part of reality. Okay. So they exist, right?
But it's not man-made because there's mushrooms.
Mushrooms, yeah. So
interesting.
So there's something that exists that can change your perception of reality in a very, very drastic way.
Okay.
And I don't know why they exist. They do. Okay. There's an understanding when you take a psychedelic, and again, the mushrooms are probably the biggest one that they had the biggest effect on me in terms of my perception.
Do they all do the same thing, or is it like that this one's different? But then why would it be different?
Sure. I think they all have the capacity to trigger the same thoughts and ideas about the nature of reality, because they distort reality so much and often just replace it. Okay, but what they replace it with can be completely different. So ayahuasca is one that people talk about. Apparently it has a very feminine spirit sort of capacity to it. Peyote is that's a desert cactus. That one has a very masculine spirit tied to it that so there's something about the delivery of it that comes across as either male or female.
You meaning you feel like a woman when you're on it?
No, like a woman is communicating things to you, or a male is communicating things to you. One of my experiences.
That's weird.
One of my early experiences was actually a touch with the divine feminine or something like that, and it was like this true love on the other side that's always there. It's got very similar qualities to like the Virgin Mary, which is kind of weird, but it's like, okay, this eternally virginal, ever faithful femaleness is there on the other side. It's like touching the divine feminine, for lack of a better word. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, how could I have ever forsaken you for any other, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, no, you're supposed to go back into, consensus reality, the dream, to experience things and learn things. Like, this is what you're there for. All this communication is like telepathic. So it's like this other entity and I are just communicating. You know, it's not a word thing. It's just a knowing thing, which is also weird. But then, you know, yeah, so this reality exists for a reason, and it's to learn lessons about love and friendship and, you know, in my case, how to parent 5 kids and have a loving life and, you know, do a podcast and things like that. I mean, so there's all these different lessons that we're constantly learning. Most of them have to do with love, because that's, you know, the ultimate nature of reality. God is love, right? And a lot of that love is tied up into how do you love other people, you know, but the other piece of that is how do you learn to love yourself? There's a lot of people that don't love themselves very well. I'm one of them. But you know, that gets into all of these questions about you know, war or people from other religions, or you know, what does it mean to be an American versus, you know, Chinese, for example. Like right now things are rocky there. Like, you know, how do I learn to love those people? How do I learn to love you know, horrible people? You know, you know, be the Christ on the cross, you know, forgive the people that are actually physically doing this to me right now, you know. What does that mean? So I don't know.
That's interesting.
So, but it's all tied up into this.
So what do you think's going on then? Like when you walk in, let's say you're going on some trip or whatever, not like to California, but like I don't even know how you take this stuff, smoke it, eat it. So say you're going on one of those trips, and what is is that your explanation of what is going on?
So to me, what is going on?
Because it seems really vague. And the other side of the coin is like, why is it that, like, let's say, you obviously have had good experience with it. So for you, it's like, this is positive, and this is, like you said, there's like this loving thing there. But what happens when somebody's like, because the only ones I've heard is like listen to a Joe Rogan podcast, and it's like the little blue guys running around, and I'm sitting there going, this sounds just jacked up. It doesn't sound, I don't know. I just like, but it's like, I've heard all these stories and I'm going, why is it? So if is it just showing proof of there's another reality, there's another dimension, or is it like, this is your real reality? Because why is it some people have bad trips and some people have good ones?
Well, let me start it from, I want to answer that, but I'm going to start from the perspective of like, what do I think is actually going on with reality?
Okay.
I think reality is consciousness. Okay. So we have a consciousness, and I'm not saying it's just our own individual perception of what's going on. Okay. So I think that you exist, you have a consciousness inside you, but how I think this reality plays out is there's only one of them. There's one consciousness. And we're going to call that consciousness God. We're going to give it a label. And this God consciousness is, again, it's singular, it's love, it exists in perpetual bliss, and, you know, again, all the qualities of God that you want. Now, there's one thing about consciousness that is reflected in nature, but that we don't typically realize. And that is that it has the capacity to fractal. You're familiar with fractal patterns, like
tears in the...
Kind of. So an example would be like the veins in your arm. Okay. Yeah. So the veins in your arm, you know, it starts at one point, but then it goes out in like branches. Yeah. And the nature of a fractal is that, like, if you zoom in on a piece of the fractal, then you end up seeing the same kind of self-similar patterns play over and over again. So I'm trying to think. There's a very popular zoom that they do. It's a mathematical shape, and so it has a particular pattern, but then they like zoom in on one area, and you see that shape kind of repeated over and over. Yeah. You know, even as you're zooming in layer after layer after layer. Okay. So from the highest level, there's only one of the thing. Okay. But you can go into any branch of it and zoom down forever, and you keep seeing that pattern played over and over and over again. Okay. So consciousness is this fractal thing. Again, there's only one of them. Thing isn't even the right word. It's not a thing, right? Like, so things are out here, coffee cup, brain would be a thing.
Yeah.
But your conscious experience is not a thing. Like, it's not tangible. I can't put it in a box.
Yeah.
Okay. It's beyond whatever that is. Even thoughts are things in comparison to whatever consciousness is. Like, thoughts are what consciousness does. It's not what it is. Like, there's, if you go to the Eastern traditions, they talk about awareness as being kind of like the ground of whatever this is. So this fractal consciousness, the process that it does is it dreams. And then it goes and it takes every possible perspective in this infinitude of dreams that it's doing. Okay. So just like when you dream, there's nothing actually there except for your sleeping consciousness. Like, your brain didn't suddenly get turned into little bits of matter that created the dream world. It's like, no, your imaginal quality consciousness generated this thing, and it's fully immersive. You're involved in it. You're participating in it. You don't really know how it got created there. So that's creation ex nihilo. Creating out of nothing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a universe. Poof. It just got made.
Yeah.
Like, call it 6 days if you want, but like, that's it.
Okay.
And from the perspective of God, like, this is a dream in comparison. Like, it is less real than this divine source reality. Like, this is the contingent thing. This is something God does, but it's not God itself. Okay. So that means that, like, in reality, what you're doing, you're running around and experiencing, like, the thing that is experiencing that is divine. Okay. Call it the Holy Spirit, call it Christ within you, call it, I don't really care what label you put on it,
right?
But that capacity to experience is a divine thing. Not only that, it is generating on the fly all this stuff out here for you to experience.
Then where did that stuff? Where did that come from?
It's not coming from anywhere. Its reality is consciousness, though. So it feels like physical stuff. It behaves like physical, real things. If I was to zoom in on this, it would have the properties of metal and coffee, but but it's not real. Like, it is dream. It is illusion. Again, in comparison to this other side.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then the spirit world is somewhere between everything is one, and united in that oneness, and everything is multiple things. So like, if you try psychedelics or have a mystical experience out of the blue, you've popped into the spirit world, you see, oh yeah, of course, this is where I came from, this is where I'm going, everything's going to be okay. When I die, I'm going to go experience some new things or whatever afterwards.
So what causes, so if it's all consciousness and all this stuff, how did we get trapped in these bodies? So whatever this mystic force is just like, I'm going to grab this soul and just slap you in this body.
Yeah.
But then why, if it's consciousness, why is it that we age? Does our consciousness, if it's always been out there, how does it age into what we have now? Because when I was 2 years old, there's no way I could have this conversation.
Yeah.
But my consciousness has always been there.
Yeah.
So then was it just stagnant?
Amnesia is the short. So part of the fractaling capacity of consciousness is that it can cause amnesia. It can cause you to forget. Here's an example in real life, okay? Because I think this reality mirrors the other reality, like in very profound ways. Are you familiar at all with dissociative identity disorder? Schizophrenia is the other word.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So DID,
Okay.
that's the official name nowadays. It's not your schizos, no.
Yeah, well,
DID.
it's offensive.
Yeah, exactly. So DID is the official name. Typically what happens in DID is it's brought about by childhood trauma or like really awful stuff. It's wartime survivors. It's abuse victims as children. Okay, so what happens to these people is the abuse is happening to them, and part of their internal state breaks off. Okay, or if you wanted to put it in spiritual terms, that maybe somebody else, some other entity is like summoned from the spiritual realm to take the brunt of it, to play a role in this person's life.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a separation or an addition of something else. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me. So as the abuse is occurring, this other entity is taking on all of the memories of that abuse. They're taking on all of the experiences of it, and the front, the normal child, normal consciousness is basically turned away from it and experiencing something completely different, an internal world, lollipops and rainbows. I don't really know. But then anytime the abuse is repeated, they switch, the other one gets the experiences, the memories, etc., and then the child comes back. Now it's a trauma protection thing. Like this is, it's protecting that child from experiencing the horrors of the reality that they're actually going through. But often they can't remember it because, again, like this other personality, this other entity is actually taking on all those experiences.
So you're viewing this world as more or less the abused and the spiritual world as...
I think it's the same process.
Okay, the same process.
So, again, I'm not saying like the spiritual world is abusing you.
No, I meant this world.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, But what I'm saying is like this process for consciousness to kind of forget what it is, that it is this spirit.
Okay.
Pretend that it's in a body. It dreams up a body, it dreams up a universe, etc., and then participates in that fully for a life. And then when it dies, or in the case of DID, they can go through this process. It reintegrates, and so you can actually, for these people with DID, they can remember those things, and the two split personalities can
become one.
Yeah, individually die or something like that, and fuse and become one. And again, that's a weird process. It's not very well understood, and I don't know the mechanisms for doing that because it's all internal. It's part of consciousness. But it has something to do with like this reuniting of memories, this healing of whatever that division is. Oftentimes it's like, I'm not actually needed to play this role anymore. I'm gonna stop being the holder of these memories and guardian of that. I'm gonna allow this recombining of them. But so I think that's what happens when we die, that our memories then get added to whatever the source consciousness is, and it uses these memories to understand more about itself.
Okay.
Because again, there's only one of these things. God is learning about God through this process, through us. It's learning what it is in the case of love, and learning what it is not in the case of hate.
So what you do here, does it affect that at all?
It absolutely affects it.
Okay.
If
you're a piece of crap person, you know what I mean?
Well,
and then it's like, well, when you die, you just kind of go off into whatever. But that's all. So then, so then why is it? So like, where did you come up with these theories, or was it explained to you? But then again,
sure,
not everyone has that same experience. So like, you and me could both be tripping out of our minds right now.
Yeah.
And then we both wake up and you're like, this is the reality. And then you're trying to convince me of that. And I'm going, bro, I did not have that experience. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever experienced. Sure. And drive me away from it. So then how do you know who's right?
Good question. I think that there's similarities in experience that will transcend any particulars of the experience. Okay, so there's something about it where it's like, okay, if you had a strong enough experience to have your reality replaced by, fractal patterns, or, even just visions, okay, right? Even at that level, you can analyze that and say, oh yeah, if that vision feels at the very least just as real as what I'm experiencing, when you step back and look at it, you can be like, well, how do I know then what is real. Okay?
Okay.
Because that question about what is real is actually foundational to everything. Like, how do you know what is real? Here's an example. How did you get here today?
Well, I drove.
Okay, you drove. Okay. Do you remember that you drove? Or did you actually drive?
What do you mean?
Well, what do you have access to right now? Okay, you've got access to a memory, right?
Yeah.
Okay, can you go back into your memory and actually prove that that happened?
Yeah, because my truck's sitting outside.
Well, your truck's sitting outside, yes, but it would be sitting outside now.
What do you mean?
What I'm trying to get at is that memories are not real in that they're not something that you can actually go and experience. They exist as a mental construct. I'm looking back at my life through time. This happened, that happened, et cetera, et cetera. And they mesh up with my memories, okay? Because I expected you here. I presume you drove your truck.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the end of the day, they are this thing called memory that I can't ever go verify. Like I can go out and it will behave as expected. Your truck will be parked out front.
Yeah, but I mean,
but it's a mental thing that's happening. Like it's not something that I can go back and verify. Same with the future. So that's the past. All of past.
You mean so like basically? I mean, you can technically verify it.
Well, kind of. Okay.
Because like, we rode together.
Sure.
And then we both sat in here.
We
like right now, like we're gonna have this, and we're verifying it because we're recording it.
Let's go even more extreme then. Okay, 1 billion years ago, can we verify 13 billion year old universe? No.
We can't even figure out how to wipe our own rear ends in this country correctly.
No, exactly.
Let alone that.
So we've got this. We've got this. Let's say we can't verify 13 billion years ago. Okay. Can we verify 100,000 years ago? We've got a lot less there. Okay. So we're taking this past and we're bringing it forward. Where does reality start in our timeline? Go coming from the past forward. Where does it start? And at some point, it's like, okay, there's generations that are dead. How can I verify any of those conversations? I don't know. We'll bring it forward. How can we verify, for example, you were born? At some day, the thing that you're depending on is story. Okay. And again, that story actually goes up to a split second ago. We've been having this conversation. Obviously, we're recording it. But how do we know that you didn't just fall into the dream and that whole past history story and everything was just written immediately in the present now?
I mean, I guess that can get pretty trippy.
Yeah. Okay. The future is the same way. Okay. Does 100 years from now exist? No. Like we can't even envision it. Like there's not something called like 100 years from now that we can go and visit.
Okay.
Bring that all the way back. Does a millisecond from now actually exist? Does my next sentence exist in a way?
Yeah, I mean, well, no.
It's expected.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you
could just be weird and just stop talking.
Yeah.
And then be like, told you there was no conversation there. But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, but you expected that.
Yes, yeah.
So you anticipated it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the only thing is like, so that theory is interesting, but the problem is like, if it's just consciousness and like, how do you know any of that actually happened in memories and stuff? If I just take a knife out right now and cut my hand off.
Yeah.
And you can't just be like, well, that's just a kind of a, no, I literally cut my hand off.
Yes.
And I didn't envision that, and I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life.
Well, but that plays into the question. So right now, what I'm trying to point at is that we exist on this it's a very thin thing. It's so thin it doesn't actually exist. This very thin thing that exists between or at the meeting point of past and future. And we call this thing, whatever it is, we call it now. And now is this razor thin, weird thing, right? This is how weird it is, okay? Let's say I can get in a fast spaceship and I go take off on a journey and I go, near the speed of light, okay? And then I come back around and I land here. You're gonna have aged, let's say 20 years. I'll have aged 5 years. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we sit down and we have another one of these conversations. Again, for you, 20 years from now. For me, 5 years from now. How does that even work? The entire time, we both had this experience of it being now. Your body aged 20 years. You've got 20 years worth of memories. My body aged 5 years. I have 5 years worth of memories. But at both of our times, the only time it ever was exactly right now. Everything else is story, memory, or expectation. So how can you have more now than I had? Like
that's not. I mean, I don't know.
Like you can't like pour it into a bucket, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
yeah, that is interesting. I actually was watching a YouTube video on that the other day on how time works and stuff. And but so granted, that's a theory because you listen to these physicists and all these people say that, but they've never experienced and we've never done it because we can't go that far out of.
Sure.
So like it's a theory, just like the whole. There's a giant black hole sucking all this stuff up. We can't even see.
Sure.
We can't even see what a star looks like.
Yeah.
So we can say all this stuff, but we can't even reach a star.
Well,
so what I'm saying is like that whole idea that, okay, Star Wars has it on there and Inception and all these movies have, well, you can time travel and you can go and like what you just said, like if you go here and do this, then you'll be 5 years older and I'll be 20.
Sure.
Is a theory because you can't prove it because we don't have the technology to prove it.
Yes and no. It works on smaller speeds too. For example, our GPS satellites use this theory to help re-coordinate where they are and figure out exactly where different places on Earth are. Okay. What I mean is that our GPS satellites experience, milliseconds less now than we do. So if you're flying on that satellite, your now would contain milliseconds less worth of memory than mine would. Now we can't compare it that well because, again, we'd be going at approximately close enough to the same speed that those milliseconds worth of now don't really compute. Like how do you remember a millisecond more than me? Like how do you put that down? It becomes obvious at 20-year versus 5-year intervals, but it's much less obvious with these satellites. But it's the same principle, though. We're both locked in this now.
Okay.
But one of us is experiencing more or less of it. In fact, if you drive off in your car away from me, you're actually experiencing less now than I am. Again, like these tiny fractions of a second more, less. But just the act of moving changes our relationship in time. Not enough for us to notice, but it's there. Which is mind-blowing.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's circle back a little bit. So what's the point of this world? Because if that's the real world, first off, why does it take a drug or a mushroom for you to understand that? The other thing is what's the point of this world? And if it doesn't matter, I mean, that's depressing.
The point of this world is the lessons about love, loving your neighbor as yourself, loving God. It's the message of Jesus and pretty much every other prophet or sage ever, and that is love. Okay.
What's the point in that, though?
The point in that is kind of the return journey back to source. Okay, so
and the source is love.
Source is love. Source is consciousness. It's it's actually unconditional, which is kind of the neat part. So you asked before about all those evil people.
Yeah.
From the perspective of source, it almost doesn't matter whether you are good or evil because, again, from that perspective, you are less real. And indeed, it is source interacting with source. Right? It's God interacting with God. It is God in the form of Corbin having a conversation with God in the form of Bob. Talking about God in the form of Jesus. Or, whatever other form.
So we're all gods.
Not gods plural. There's only one of them.
And we're all part of that.
fractal incarnations of, sure, yeah. So, but that's the eternal life. That's, you know, the philosopher's stone. That's the fountain of youth. That's enter into my kingdom. That's, you know, the stone buried in the potter's field. It's all those things.
Oh man, it gets complex pretty quick.
It does, yeah.
It's
it's very complex, but it's also very simple. Like that thing inside that is experiencing this.
So is there like, so if you're going to start a religion with that, how in the world do you explain that in a more cohesive?
Well, let's put it in terms of Christianity. Okay, so 6 days of creation, right? Yeah. That's actually a symbol, or it's a metaphor of this psychological fractal part happening. Okay, so it starts with source, God, creating heavens and the earth.
Okay.
It's a separation of light from dark. So we've got a single point where all these things, in Eastern traditions, they call it non-dual. Okay, so not two is what that means. So there's not two things. So in the Eastern traditions, they call this non-duality. Okay, so that's the not two-ness. So duality is two. In non-dualities, all possible dualities are shown to be less than what the real non-dualness is. Okay, so dualities would be up and down, light and dark, black and white, good and evil. You know, everything has its opposite. Magnets. Okay, so a magnet has a north pole and a south pole, right?
Okay.
Doesn't matter how much you cut up that magnet, it's always going to end up with the north pole and the south pole. Okay, that's a symbol of duality in our reality. Okay, the non-dualness of it is that's one magnet. Like you can't separate it and have just a north or just the south. They're both tied together in this one thing called a magnet. All right, so God is this non-dual love consciousness thing. It reveals itself to Moses as what? I am, right? Like those are the big words. So that there's a sense of that within yourself too, right? Like you know that you exist. I am, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's how that divinity is already flowing through you. Like you can, there's no question about your own existence. Of course I exist. Like there's something, you know, even if I was to, you know, clip off a finger, I don't exist in the finger. There's something more fundamental that continues to exist in me.
Okay.
Right. The 6 days of creation then are how all these dualities are created: light and dark, separating land from sea, separating you know, the birds of the air from the beasts of the field. So it's actually just showing like all these divisions within things. It's like highlighting, hey, look, here's more dualities and the order in which they're created. The pinnacle of that then is the uniting of two dualities, earth and breath. You know, so earth and air, and you know, the breath of life is coming into man. Here we are. So I see that as a metaphor of what consciousness does. Like that's how it creates dreams. It's how it creates any universe. It's a separation process.
Okay.
So then, if you're going to give this story that God is doing this process, how do you explain that? And I think the story of Christ is actually a fantastic metaphor for that. So God actually incarnates, and it's saying, hey, look, I am here as person, just as much God as any other, you know, form of God, yet fully human, just like the rest of you. The virgin birth is referring to kind of this consciousness existing without being born. Like, you know, it just is. It is for eternity. Like there's nothing that can create or destroy consciousness itself. Now, anything in the dreams, absolutely, those can be created and destroyed. They're lesser than. They're not real in the same way. But they're, yeah. But the thing itself, the thing that is experiencing it all, can never be. So, born of a virgin, again, this consciousness is eternally creative. That's kind of like the ever virginal nature of Mary, which is kind of, that's more of a Roman Catholic idea. But
yeah, I mean, she had more kids, so she wasn't a virgin her whole life.
Yeah. But Catholics would disagree. But that motif of the ever virgin is, even in like many other religions, they've got kind of these female goddesses that are involved in the creation of the world, and many of them often retain kind of this ever-present virginity, even though they're creating all kinds of stuff. Like they're responsible for it, but like they're or there's these mythos of go bathe in these waters and your virginity will come back, stuff like that. Like that sort of concept or idea is baked in a lot of different religions.
Yeah, it's just kind of strange.
It is, yeah. A lot of that stuff is metaphor, though. So, it's how do you describe this thing that is beyond description?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot there.
I've been talking for a long time.
No, you're good. You're good. No, it's interesting to listen to, because that's a whole nother perspective that I've never heard before.
It gets into like, the whole question of aliens, right? Because, does Jesus need to go and die in all these different worlds? I put that question another way. If a more technologically advanced species came here and they were trying to tell us something about, their philosophy, their understanding of God, religion, etc., who actually has like the better foundation? Like, is it us going on book technology and old stories, or is it them with their space technology and their, who's actually probably got a better grasp?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing about aliens is this: is there's so much speculation with zero evidence.
Sure.
Now, I can say zero evidence because everyone's like, no, man, no, I saw on Fox News, dude, some guy in the Navy, like, there's pictures. Why is it you can go out there and say, okay, we've got this picture of the Milky Way that's beautiful. We can't even grasp what the Milky Way is.
Sure.
So I highly doubt any of those photos are real. I will say that for real. But if you're going to claim that this picture of Saturn is 100%, that is what Saturn looks like, why can't we get a picture of one of these spacecrafts that's not so grainy it looks like it was a picture taken out of the 1800s?
Sure.
But it was taken with a $12 million camera.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to know. Anyway, I'm going on a rant here because the alien thing is it's fun to talk about. It's neat to speculate, but in reality, people get in this thing going, well, if aliens came here, they'd be smarter than us. Why would you say that?
Good point.
Smarter than us in what way?
Yeah.
Well, they obviously got here. Yeah, we claim to go to the moon. I'm just saying, I don't know if they got here. How do we know that's just not? It's all speculation. It's always like, because I've heard that argument of going, well, if they came here and told us they seeded this planet and all this, they're obviously smarter. That's a great theory, bro, but there's no evidence. Because that's the thing, is like, Jesus did walk on this earth.
Sure.
He was an actual man.
Yeah.
Historically, there's more evidence for that than there is for a whole bunch of other people that have written books.
Shakespeare,
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like all these Greek philosophers, everyone's like, man, this guy was brilliant. Yeah, we've got like 2 copies of his book, but we've got 10,000 copies of the Gospel of Matthew that you're denying.
Yeah.
So that's my theory. So we're going to sit here and speculate with aliens. And I know I'm probably all over the place. It's shotgun blast. Okay. And I talk out loud what I think. So deal with it, you two.
I like it. I love it.
But that's my thought. Is like we can speculate, and everyone does that with aliens. I'm using aliens because that's the easiest one, just to rip to shreds.
Sure.
And I listen to plenty of Joe Rogan podcasts with all these theories and ideas, and Neil deGrasse Tyson grinds my gears. So because it's all speculation and theory, there's no proof of any.
So you don't have a lot of belief about it one way or the other. It's just
I'll deal with it when they show up.
Okay.
If they show up right now and they walk in here and they're like, "You're wrong," and I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Prove to me. You know what I mean? Because I'm one of those guys where it's like, we can sit here and be like, well, if there's an alien right in front of you, you're going to deny it? There's not.
Yeah.
There's not. So let's use what we do know
Mm-hmm.
that we can act. It's a tangible thing. That's like all these things with outer space.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna hear these physicists say, "Yeah, that's 25 billion light years." Bro, we know the science. You can't even measure that far. Like, well, we use math. That you will have to admit that is not accurate. We don't even know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we can't even get cell phone coverage in your basement right now.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk to some dude on Saturn.
Yeah.
And we're going to communicate with rovers on Mars. Why can't I get cell phone reception in the middle of Indiana?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, okay, I'm second guessing it. And they're like, well, we use these new beams and all that. Well, maybe you should invest so people can actually communicate here on Earth.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway, I'm just some of that stuff's just like you can blast holes in it, and I'm sure someone will get on the comment section and blast holes through all my theories. But then again, guess what? We're all blasting holes through theories.
Why not?
So,
yeah, my theory is that the universe is an infinite place, which is really, really big. And I think it's really unlikely that this planet is the only one out there that is supporting intelligent life.
What if it was? Because both are what if.
Sure.
There's a what if there's something else out there, but there's also a what if this is the only place
so
that has life.
If it was, then this would be considered like the first for this dream. Okay. Which, again, I don't think so. If it was, then, hey, we've got a giant universe for humanity to play in, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I tend to think, again, that consciousness is far weirder than we give credit for. I have been in states where it's like you forget that you took the psychedelic. It feels eternal, like you forget what time it is, and that time is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like falling into the eternal now, and you're like, oh yeah, this is eternity. So to me, I would view aliens as disassociated parts of me. So, because again, they're conscious beings, they're experiencing things, they're connected to whatever this source is the same way that I am. I think that they probably do exist, and I think the reason that we don't see them is one, because humanity, again, doesn't understand reality very well.
So what do you think those things flying around out there are? That they claim to be, I mean, they say UFO, which only means it's an unidentified object. Doesn't mean it's this little green Martian running around, which everyone's like, it's gotta be. It's like, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be China.
Yeah. True.
You know what I mean? But I mean, so what do you think that is?
I think.
And why can't we get a decent picture of it?
I think that their technology is so far ahead of us, even 1,000 years. Like, let's say they had gone through, their industrial revolution and, discovering the light bulb. We discovered the light bulb, 200 years ago? Okay, that's nothing. That's a blink of an eye in cosmic timescales. Yeah. It is nothing. You give our civilization 1,000 years, and we'll be able to make tic-tac flying machines that can go through air, water, space equally well. Okay, without needing like new ships and new hulls and new stuff. So I think that they're just that much farther advanced than we are. That it's just not a challenge. Okay. With that comes the ability to hide, to bend light in different ways. Again, if you understand things as consciousness, then your capacity to affect the dream however you want it to becomes far, far greater. An analogy would be the phenomenon of lucid dreaming. Have you ever had a lucid dream?
That just means that it's like real.
No, close. In a lucid dream, you wake up inside the dream and you realize, oh yeah, I'm actually dreaming this thing.
Awesome, yeah, I've had that happen. I've actually had that happen.
So I want I want to be able to fly. You jump up, you start flying around.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I want to fulfill some sort of fantasy. Open the door and you got a hot tub with 80 beautiful women.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you're lucid dreaming, you can create whatever you want.
I've had it happen a couple times, but then by the time I start to realize and start making decisions, I wake up.
Then you wake up. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now imagine being able to lucid dream, but in this reality. Okay. Now all of a sudden, the capacity to hide yourself, the capacity to, participate at these different layers becomes a lot easier.
So basically, they're at a more advanced version of consciousness than we are.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
So they have a deeper connection with the spirit side of things. They can, and that capacity allows you to affect and interact with the dream in a far different way than we as humans are able to.
Yeah, it's just a lot to think about.
It is, yeah. And I think that we're at some sort of a, call it an introduction phase. So we're going to be seeing all these, Tic Tacs, whatever you want to call it, like the crazies are going to be coming out of the woodwork. Oh yeah, I was abducted by aliens and all that sort of stuff. Now again, real or not, I don't know. I can't verify these things. I can either believe somebody's story and what they talk about, or I can choose not to. One assumption is, yeah, lots of humans are liars. The other assumption is maybe this is how kind of we're introduced into the cosmic picture instead of the Earth picture, right? Because we're a very violent species, right? We've nuked each other a few times, we're not great.
So if you're a good person here, then you're going to have things go better for you in this conscious world. The consciousness
in the spirit world.
Yeah, if you're
after death or whatever.
Yeah, so if you're a good person, then that works. Then things just kind of fall into place there. But if you're a bad person,
yeah. Well, let me put it this other way. I think that when you die, one of the things that happens is you feel the other side of all your interactions.
What does that do?
So let's say you're a horrible person and beat your kid.
Mm-hmm.
When you die, you get to experience being that kid getting beat.
And then once you get beat, you're done?
Well, I think that you...
Eternally?
Well,
or is it
so eternally,
for the period of time that you beat him?
Eternally and time time is a concept. It's not a...
But I mean, is that just one moment of every time you've done that to your kid, or is that a ongoing thing throughout whatever reality of time is?
Good question. I don't know. What I think I know about it is that however that is experienced, it is just.
Okay.
So it is balanced. It is not that you get more punishment or more whatever, but you experience it in such a way that you grow from it and learn. And
then it's basically you're forgiven and move on.
Yeah, I think the forgiveness is always there. Because again, love is an unconditional thing, which is a very weird concept. Us humans don't understand the unconditionality is it doesn't matter what you do, you are still eternally loved. You can be Hitler and you're still eternally loved.
Yeah. Well, Christ did it on the cross.
Yeah.
Lord, forgive them; they don't know what
they do.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that's one reason why I'm a universal salvation sort of person. But I also believe in a reincarnate version. I don't think this is a one and done reality. I don't think.
So you're going to go into consciousness, and when you die from here, your spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, just kind of gets up where it goes where we can't see,
mm-hmm.
and then decides that let's just redo this whole thing over again, except you're coming back as a caterpillar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, what animals? Do you mean animals have consciousness?
Yeah, I would say they do. There's an idea of different realms of density, they typically call it, vibration, whatever. So lower versions would be your insects, your plants, stuff like that. I mean,
these suck.
Yeah.
To come back as a bug. I feel like that. You want to talk about violent?
Yeah.
The bug world is a violent world. You just pull a rock over and everything's just it's like the freaking Roman Colosseum every day.
Yeah. So I don't think you tend to come back as.
That's what Hitler came back as.
He
came back as
being aimed 1,000 times over.
No, just getting wrecked.
I think that we don't tend to downgrade, right?
Can those bugs upgrade?
Yeah, I think they do. I think that they learn their lessons and then upgrade into experiencing some
So like an ant right now could be someone else's consciousness.
Well,
a type of consciousness.
It is a type of consciousness.
And it upgrades into a beetle?
Maybe. Again, I don't know what the path is.
Okay.
I don't have
it's all
access
hypothetical then.
Well, yeah, but for example, dogs, pets, they're getting a bigger identity than just being a part of the pack. Okay, so they're learning a different set of lessons than the beetle is. They're learning a different set of lessons than deep sea fish. But maybe you're done being a dog and you come back as like a dolphin or something. Like there seems to be like these weird gradations in consciousness in terms of what experience is, in terms of what you're capable of.
So then what's a plant?
Well, it depends. I don't know how plants work. It could be either higher or lower. And the reason I say that is there's something giving about plants where they exist for sustenance. So perhaps there's like a higher spirit that is over a bunch of plants. That's how, like, for example, ayahuasca would present itself. It's not like you drink it and experience a different spirit than what I experience. It's like kind of the same one, even though you're pulling from different plants. So maybe there is like a being that is represented in each type of plant. The carrot being or the
Dude, if I ever meet the being that's a part of poison ivy, I'm gonna punch him in the face. Dude, no, that's not.
Okay, so but yeah, so I don't know if it's one over each class of plants or some plant. I don't know how that works. If each individual plant has its own consciousness, or if it's But again, consciousness is a weird thing. Maybe it's like each plant has a personality in the larger organism that is all carrots or all I don't know.
So how does that idea work with eating animals?
Another good question.
So like Joe Schmo over there, the cow, he's trying to learn his lessons, and you just walk over there and just start eating on it. I mean, the poor devil, he didn't have a chance.
So that is one of the reasons that many people on the spiritual path turn to vegetarianism at the end of it. That's one reason why
the Indians do that.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
Or India, Hindus.
Yeah. So there is this recognition of the self, I in the other, the animal, the plant, et cetera, et cetera. And so many say, okay, as a result, I'm going to go and eat farther down the food chain, eat the plants, maybe eat the insects, but stay away from the meats and stuff like that. So there's an argument to be made that there's, let's give these animals the time to learn whatever their lesson is. Because again, you're seeing like literally yourself, your own consciousness in it. There's another piece, and one of the reasons why I wanted to put the background up, and hopefully I'll have it post-production here, that is the idea of the Ouroboros, which is the dragon that eats its own tail. So there is something about reality where it is continually eating and recycling itself. Now, we as humans, because we lived for 80 years, get to the point where we're like, we're not really a part of that cycle, But the fact of the matter is, we're going to die and we're going to be worm food, or So even the stuff that makes up us is going to be recycled. With a consciousness-only view of reality, idealism, which is kind of what I'm promoting here. Even when the cow dies, the essence of the cow, the spirit of the cow, the consciousness of the cow does not. Like, it continues on and experiences new things. So, is it wrong or right to eat animals? I think there's something of a telos that we need to kind of treat things according to where they are and what they're for.
Okay.
You make houses out of wood because that's what it's there for. You don't make houses out of cows because that's not what they're there for.
Right. Yeah.
So there is something about that, staying within the telos of what these different things are around and exist for.
Okay.
And that's how you love those things according to
so
what they
it's
are.
kind of more or less like this is more of an epiphany, and then all religions lead to the same.
Ultimately, I think so. Yes. I think that it's the old three blind men touching the elephant. One's touching the trunk. Oh, this thing is like a snake. One's touching the tail. And, oh, it's like a blade of grass. The other's touching the leg, and like, no, it's a tree trunk.
Gotcha.
But this elephant God consciousness is far bigger than any one particular perspective.
That's interesting. I've never heard that idea at all.
Well, there you go.
All right.
I think that there's a lot of work that actually needs to be done in Christianity as a whole. I think it has gotten itself into a corner where it tends to be very tribalistic. This is reflected in the, either you're saved or not saved, or, here's a list of irredeemable things, here's the list of not, and Christians fracture on all kinds of different doctrines. And I'm not calling out like your church or any church in particular.
No, dude, it's a mess. It's a train wreck. It's really what it is. And it's not, and people don't, I mean, you see it throughout the Bible talking about unity amongst believers.
Yes.
Well, we don't have unity. And it's always, well, you did this and you hurt me. Well, what happened to forgiveness? Mm-hmm. Well, I forgive you, but I don't like you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, like you're starting to get into these weird things of like, okay, that's just pride. Like you're just butthurt about whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not going to disagree with it. I mean, but you also have, that's part of sinful man. Mm-hmm. And you have people who can't let things go. Mm-hmm. And then you also have people that are a horrible representation of Christ. Mm-hmm. And they hurt a lot of people and drive people away from Christ because of the way they act. And everyone goes, well, say, that Christian there acted like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one out of how many? And then you read the scriptures and everything he did went against the scriptures, yet you're blaming the church, Christ, whatever, the religion, if you want to call it that, on one dude. And you're like, well, see, they're all the same. Yeah. Okay, obviously not. That's like saying all Muslims. Yeah. Every single Muslim's walking around with a suicide vest just waiting to just blow everybody up. You can't say that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You know what I mean? Just sort of like, I have no idea. There's so many different religions out there, but the thing is no one really does that with other religions because it's offensive.
Yeah.
But everybody can say whatever the heck they want about Christianity because it's like, well, that's just stupid. Yeah. And they don't care about offending Christians, but don't go and offend a Muslim. Gosh darn it. Mm-hmm. Don't go and offend a Hindu, but I don't care what you say about Christians. And that says something to me. Like, why is it that Christianity can be everyone's punching bag, but the minute you say something about Muslims, you're insensitive. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute, you're not insensitive about Christians? Yeah, because Christians are idiots. Yeah. So who hurt you? Yeah. That's what I'm going. Who hurt you in your life? So no, it wasn't a Muslim. It must have been a Christian. Mm-hmm. And how did that happen? Yeah. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at with it. Is I mean, it's funny because Jesus told us that they don't hate you, they hate me. So what they do to you, they're doing to me. Yeah. And you see that in Christianity because no one gives a rip about offending a Christian. Mm-hmm. They don't.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Why is that? There has to be something there that is so offensive, but I don't understand what's offensive about the gospel.
I think
that's what it blows my mind. I cannot understand what's offensive about the gospel. I can find some stuff offensive about other religions. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to cast stones, but that's the thing is you want to be inclusive, but don't be inclusive with Christians because they're bigots. Yeah. In what way? Yeah. In what way are we bigots?
I think part of it is you have a big long history where Christians have fought and killed each other, and people from other religions over stuff.
And Muslims haven't.
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, they.
Because I've heard this argument that the Christians back in the day, and they weren't following the scriptures. Yeah. Take the Bible and read it. Yeah. And that is what we're. That is the book of all the answers. That is the book of a picture of Christ and how you were supposed to be, how you were supposed to emulate Christ. Mm-hmm. Now, the Crusades. Mm-hmm. Everyone uses this argument, and this is fantastic. I love this argument because you can punch holes through it all day. Yeah. Well, Christians, the Crusades. What way were they acting like a Christian? See, they weren't. So they weren't Christians. Yeah. What does the Crusades have to do with Christianity? You're talking about a bunch of occultish type people
Mm-hmm.
who went in there and everyone's going to go, you can't say that. I just did.
Yeah.
They were not acting like, where in the scriptures does it say just go and just completely, and I know you're going to say the Old Testament.
Yeah.
I'm talking the New Testament, when Christ comes here, and it literally says, if someone slaps you, turn your other cheek and let him hit you again.
Yeah, yeah.
If someone does this, I'm talking about that, because you're offended by Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, anyway, people get offended by Christ, yet Christ never told someone to go and just absolutely massacre people because you don't believe me? What? Whack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not
the message.
That's not the message, so stop twisting it into that. So that's where I'm getting at, is that's where people, so it's like, yeah, if you don't act like a Christian, you might not be one.
There's something with, trying to figure out, like, that balance between, well, let me put it this way. The relationship with the divine has to be something that a person chooses. They can't be forced into it. Right? So you have to, pick your tradition, pick your path, however you're going to make that relationship work.
Mm-hmm.
And insofar as Christians have abandoned that and imposed some sort of a tribalistic, call it totalitarian mindset on faith, like, burning witches at the stake or whatever the case may be, crusades, et cetera, those are failures and deviations from that true and authentic relationship. Like, you can't make somebody do it. You can't even make your kids do it, right? Like, I can't, sit down and punish my kids into, praying and reading their Bible and doing these sorts of things. Like, I can't, if I tried to use that method, they would rebel and hate it, and it would go on deaf ears and actually cause more problems in the long run.
Yeah.
So that is a balance, and again, us humans, being humans, we all have those kind of more totalitarian, make others see it our way mentality. I've got that actually pretty deep. Like, I want other people to be able to see and understand perspectives that I share. But part of the challenge for me is, like, allowing that room to be like, okay, here's the best way that I can say it. Take it and run with it, and think your own thoughts, and have the Spirit work in whatever way it's supposed to.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's tough. Like, that intersectionality between Christianity and culture, and especially in this culture where Christianity as a religion is on a decline, and yet the culture has adopted so many of the tenets of it, like, unconsciously. There's a fellow, Tom Holland.
Well, I would say at least the U.S. has.
Oh, yeah.
Culturally. I mean, this country was founded on biblical principles. It's going to be hard to get that out of there.
Yeah, we are swimming in Christian waters, even when we don't realize it. Like,
we're doing everything we can to reject it. It's like, well, this country was founded on it, so I guess we're already destroying the pillars of this country. So why not just keep going at it?
But even, take, like, the weird, take the leftist love and appreciation of, say, like, LGBT issues. Okay. I don't want to get into those today, but that sort of unconditional acceptance of people of these other persuasions is a very deeply Christian message. Even if, like, the mentality of, like, hey, we need to love and include these people, like, that's Christ through and through. And
I would agree 100%, and that's what the Bible would teach. Because who did Christ hang out with that pissed off all the religious leaders of that time? Guess what?
The sinners.
It was Oh, he's hanging out with prostitutes. He's hanging out with tax collectors. Tax collectors were hated. Dude, just kick your door in and take your stuff. And they're going, well, how could you hang out with these people? And he's looking at them like, these are the least of these. These are the ones that are hated in society.
They're the ones that need it the most.
That's exactly, Christians would, a true Christian would love those people. That's what I don't understand. Now, I hate half the crap that they're doing when it comes to, like, let's have a giant march and let's arrest people because you don't agree with me. And I'm going, okay, so you have love for your own, but no love for anyone else. You know what I mean? So then it's like, okay, so now you're starting to sound like the people you hate
Yep.
Now I'm starting to go, you ask for people to love you, but you don't love anyone but your own kind.
Yeah.
If you want to call them kind. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People that live that lifestyle. So that's where I'm like, you guys are just as two-faced as everyone else that you claim to hate.
There's a that totalitarian tendency runs through all humans. That line between good and evil runs through every human heart.
Sinful nature.
There you go. Well, I think maybe we should wrap it up.
Okay.
But I had a fantastic conversation today.
Bob.
I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much.
I actually enjoyed it. It was a different perspective. I'm sure as this channel continues, we're going to have a lot of discussions on this.
Yes.
Because I like having these types of discussions. A lot of people get freaked out because they don't really even know what they believe, but they're like, don't change my mind.
Yeah.
I enjoy these discussions because, first of all, I want to get to know you.
Yeah.
So I want to know what you believe.
Yeah, same.
So,
and it's going to be roping back in because there's so many other things that I'm going to be approaching from this concept of oneness, of unity, of you are me in a different form.
Okay.
And that idea is going to be foundational in terms of like how I view the world and why I say the things that I say.
Mm-hmm.
And I love where you're coming from with your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to understand it more and more. I've seen glimpses of it in my own life in the past, and I'm like, okay, all right. But it'll be wonderful. I'm excited to keep doing these conversations.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you to the viewers for joining us here on the Brown Couch.
Yeah.
Subscribe, share, do the thing.
Indeed.
Throw some comments in there. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. If you guys have your own opinions on stuff or want to start a conversation in the comment section, let's do it. Just try to keep it halfway respectful, because otherwise there's no point. It's not productive.
Yeah.
So,
But thank you for joining us for this episode 3. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.